All right. This is Adam with National Comfort Institute coming to you one last time from the 2024 summit in Asheville, Tennessee, and I'm with Luis Keller from UEI, the National Training Manager. Did I get that right?
You got that right. Thank you.
Good. I was a little nervous. I know you just told me, but my memory's bad.
It's you know what? It's been a long conference, a lot of information going on with us, so
Yeah,
you did great.
awesome. So I just wanted to kind of nail you down and talk a little bit about, carbon monoxide awareness, and then also combustion in general. So,
Absolutely. Well, we've been doing with UEI test instruments, we've been making combustion analyzers for a very long, long time. And one of the things that I've been fortunate enough to do in my time period with UEI test instruments is I've gotten to travel the country. I've gotten to be on a variety of shows talking about the dangers of carbon monoxide and talking about how to do proper combustion analysis. And I think there's a lot of things going on in the industry, and I just can't stress enough about the dangers of carbon monoxide. And you guys have been doing a great job at the NCI promoting the dangers of carbon monoxide and the importance of combustion analysis. One of the things that we've done at UEI Test Instruments, though, is we've also partnered with an organization called the National Carbon Monoxide Awareness Association. And that has been a really great partnership for us as well as for them because they're trying to make carbon monoxide awareness not only for just the average person, but it's amazing sometimes in our industry how much you don't know.
right.
And there are a lot of misinformations and just trying to figure out what are the best practices to be able to keep homeowners and business owners and quite frankly ourselves really safe in that.
Exactly.
So earlier, well, it was back in August. I was in Kansas City. I got to attend the NCOAA. It was their second annual summit.
Right.
They worked with actually it was the National Association of Fire Marshals and the International Association of Fire Marshals, and those are really the first responders. Unfortunately, um, they get called once those alarms are actually going off. And one of the things, though, I learned is how can we affect the industry change so the firemen and the EMTs and all of them don't have to respond to those calls, and what can we do better as an industry to prevent a lot of that.
Yep. So I wanted to touch on something. They are the first responders, but when they shut down the equipment, we're the ones who get called. They actually come in and figure out what's going on and how to either condemn or repair the equipment.
Absolutely. And so I think, the things that we can do on the front end to make sure that you don't have to go back on that back end. Because the thing about carbon monoxide, we hear a lot. And I will tell you at that summit, I heard some of the most heartbreaking stories as far as carbon monoxide death. And we've heard those.
Yeah.
There's also, though, a lot of things that people don't realize that low levels of exposure to carbon monoxide can actually cause long-term injury. And there's a lot of in the medical world, it's not diagnosed as much as people would think because of the standards that home CO alarms are set off at.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. One thing that I wanted to like kind of switch gears for here for a second. You mentioned that we have, we do carbon monoxide training and we do combustion analysis and that. Jim Davis was like the pioneer of all this. He's like the godfather of it all. And it was pretty cool last night. We had an awards banquet, and Jim was able to make it, and he had a standing ovation. It like got me in the feelers.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, there was something really important to be said because somebody said if you're teaching the dangers of carbon monoxide and combustion, you either learned from Jim or you learned from somebody who learned from Jim. So
Absolutely.
I think we were very fortunate that he was able to make it out for us last night, and I was very excited to see him.
Yeah, that was very cool. So I want to talk a little bit about what products you have to offer because I'm really not familiar with the UEI combustion analyzers.
Yeah, so we have a couple of different things that are out there on the market. We do have just an ambient air portable carbon monoxide detector, a little COA2. It's a really cool little product that not only does it show you your digital display, it'll also hook up to an app and it has preset levels in it for you. So, according to the standard, you can have 1 to 9 parts per million in a residential. So it has a warning light that tells you that. And then when you get from 10 to 34, it's going to have another different color light that's going to go off. And when you get over 35, it actually is going to start like flashing at you and being a little bit of an angry. So it's going to tell you that's really where your unsafe levels are. And really, when you start talking to a lot of first responders, that 35 parts per million is where they're really going to start evacuating people out at.
Right.
And
Now,
then,
I
go
was
ahead.
just going to ask you if what's the lifespan on that tool?
So we still recommend annual calibration on it. I would have to look specifically on what that is, but anything that you really have that's detecting carbon monoxide should have an annual recertification to make sure that it's up to standard. Because even just home CO alarms, it's amazing how many people never even test those. And
Yeah.
that's really just testing, will an alarm go off, not is it reading any of the carbon monoxide.
Right. Yep.
And then the other thing that we do is we do combustion analyzers. That's something that we've done for 40 plus years. We have a variety. We have residential, commercial, and industrial. It's all part of our C160 series that we've come out with. When we talk about combustion analyzers, we're looking at our CO, we're looking at our CO2, our oxygen, and we're looking at stack temperatures. Like there's a whole lot of things that we're looking in there. And again, because it's something that is detecting carbon monoxide, you should have it recertified every year. And I am pretty excited, though, that we just won the 2024 Dealer Design Award for our service program on the analyzers because we wanted to make it easier because we realize that combustion analyzers are an important tool and they can be your first defense when you're walking into a house to even detect if there's some carbon monoxide. So we came out with a really neat program. It's every year that you send in your combustion analyzer, we give you another year warranty for up to 10 years from the date of purchase. We do same day recertification. So we have an ISO certified lab in Indianapolis. So if it lands there on, say, a Wednesday, it goes back out on Wednesday afternoon. And then the very last thing is that we actually pay for the shipping to and from you. So we've tried to make it as easy as possible, right? The easier that we can make things in people's lives, the better off we are. So
Wow, very cool. Did I hear you right that it could extend out to a 10-year warranty?
absolutely, yeah. So it comes with the first year warranty. Send it in within that first 12 months of owning it. We'll give you another year warranty, and we just keep adding to it.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, so we really try to make it as contractor friendly as we absolutely possibly can. And, as I said, it is really the first line of defense, right? You turn it on outside, you walk into a customer's home. If you happen to see that there's some CO going on, we should do our due diligence and investigate the source. And I think we've had a lot of conversation at this conference specifically about that, right? Like, what is it? An ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of responsibility on contractors when it comes to combustion. I think a lot of them like have the blinders on too, where they think if I'm not touching it, I'm not responsible. But just recently, a few weeks back, there was I'm trying to remember exactly where the case was, but there was 2 guys that are tried and convicted of negligence. I think it was a wall hung boiler.
Yeah, it was Evergreen College, I think, or something like
Yeah.
that. I think it was maybe somewhere out on the West Coast.
Something like I don't
Yeah,
remember.
we're Midwesterners,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Unfortunately, though, that is the reality. Though there's a lot of stories like that.
Yeah.
I will tell you, every time I teach a CO and combustion class, it amazes me how many people tell me they don't have a combustion analyzer, or they don't have an ambient CO detector that they're carrying around with them, but they all seem to have a story that talks about carbon monoxide.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you didn't learn from your buddy? Like, and it really is. And I think we just have to keep talking about it and bringing
Yep.
it to the forefront because, again, we're the first line of defense. We're also the last person to touch the equipment becomes the person that's responsible.
Exactly.
So if you're not doing your due diligence and going through and doing all of that proper testing, at the end, unfortunately, lives can be lost, lives can be injured, and we don't want a contractor to have to go through that.
Yeah. And I actually purchased I had a combustion analyzer for years before I went through formal training. And I have to tell you, I'm fairly new with NCI. I started May 1st. But prior to that, a couple of years ago, I took training with Jim Davis. And I have to say that was a mindset shift. And I had no idea how much I didn't understand. And it's scary. So if you have a combustion analyzer, I highly recommend getting training. Obviously, I'm going to recommend National Comfort Institute, but I'm sure UEI and there's all kinds of different resources out there that you could take advantage of with training.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm pretty easy to find. You can find me on the social media, LinkedIn, and everything like that, or you can call the office and um, they can get a hold of me to be able to schedule up some of those trainings. Now, I'm not going to promise it's not the 3-day NCI summit training, but we can get you going in the right direction.
That's awesome. Now, does your analyzer? I've never played with it. I'm just throwing this out there, but
Yep.
Is it like a app based type deal where it would
So-
connect to your phone?
So it depends on the model you have. We have some that are just standalones, and then when you get to like our C163 and our C165 Plus model, they do have an app that they'll interface with that'll allow you to like send out your reports in a digital format.
Very cool. Yeah, I think that's pretty powerful. Um, Yeah, I wanted to mention too. You brought up low level monitor. I have actually my low level monitors right behind me over here. But once you start carrying that around with you, you are surprised how frequently it will go off and it will start alarming at you. Right, like in traffic, in a hotel lobby. Not here, but I've heard from so many people here how many times they've been in a hotel and their low level monitor starts going off, just because of the mechanical equipment is not operating properly.
Well, and one of the things that I learned when I was at the NCOAA and we got to see a lot of the statistics is one of the biggest places that CO alarms should lead, the personal ones are going off, are actually hotels. Most hotels aren't actually equipped with CO detectors.
Really?
So there's a misconception. People feel that they're comfortable in public, but that's just a perception. It's
Yeah.
not actual reality. So, public spaces, we can get into the rules and regulations, but a lot of them do not actually have CO detectors. And if you go to the NCOAA website, you can read it. They have updated like daily list of like accidental CO poisonings, and it's amazing of how many of them happen in public space, whether it be a hotel, whether it actually even be something like a school. We were talking about that college earlier, and
Right.
it's amazing. So you always want to make sure that you're protecting yourself, but we
Yeah.
also want to make sure that we're doing the justice with the equipment and the right tools when we go in to do our job. That hopefully nobody walks into those spaces and it is an actual danger.
Right. Yeah. One thing I realized when I started measuring combustion and was prior to if like you would do maintenance, you would set gas pressure, whatever your process is, everything looks okay, right? The flames are blue, you're good. And then when you start testing combustion, you run into equipment that you might have worked on for years, and you realize how dangerous that piece of equipment was. And you are so lucky that nothing has happened with it, right? And it's not something that is like once every 2 or 3 years. It's fairly frequent. You run into an equipment that doesn't have proper combustion.
Yeah. And I think, the other thing I talk about is set future you up for the right. So if you start it and you're doing your combustion and you're doing it faithfully on every job, hopefully you're not going to run into any of those problems later down the road.
Yeah, exactly. And some equipment out there that's operating and functioning just should not be anymore. The days of natural draft furnaces and the old octopus systems. I mean, once it gets to a certain point, I know people don't want to hurt customers' feelings, but it's time. You know what I mean? Some of those are just unsafe in general. Even if it has proper combustion, they don't have safety circuits, and if something does happen, it could be bad.
Yeah, and our technology has dramatically changed.
Right.
Even in the last 5 years, we've seen a lot of changes that have gone on. But yeah, when you're talking about the drafting ones there, that I ask that question in a lot of my classes, and the good news is there's very few of them out there now.
Yeah.
I think everybody's got them converted over, but there's still a few, and hopefully we're recommending moving on to a more safer, more efficient product.
Yep. Yep. It's definitely something we all have to keep in mind. Anything else coming out from UEI that you want to talk about, or any other points?
You know, I can't talk, but like we're getting ready to go into the heating season,
Yep.
and we're talking about the dangers of carbon monoxide. It's really interesting though when you look at a lot of the carbon monoxide statistics. Yes, we get a lot of those spikes where alarms are going off in the fall and in the winter, right when we start getting that colder weather. But your combustion analyzer and your CO detector is not just a seasonal product. It really should be something that we're looking at year round, because anything that is fuel fired can be tested. So, we think a lot of the furnaces, but when we get into buildings, there's boilers that are keeping, your water hot. We have all sorts of other equipment that's in there. So those water heaters are a huge thing. They're running year round, right?
Right.
So your combustion analyzer isn't just a seasonal thing. It really should be something that we should be looking at as a year-round product rather than just seasonal.
Yeah, and carbon monoxide is not just a something that will happen that you could have, you could be harmed from appliance in your house, right? That was actually something I ran into. I did a super high performance house, a passive house just outside of Chicago, and they had the discussion like, hey, we don't have any gas appliances, so we don't need carbon monoxide detectors in the house. But the thing is, in all reality, there's cars 10 feet from the house on two sides, right? It's a corner lot, and they have ventilation in that house, right? We're sucking in outside air. There's a lot of things that could happen, and it doesn't necessarily have to come from a furnace, water heater, or boiler, right?
No, you're absolutely correct. There's actually a story I tell that happened not too far from me. It was a new neighborhood. It was completely electrified. Homeowner actually still decided that they wanted to have a home CO alarm in it, and it started going off one day. There's nothing in the it wasn't the car, which is the number one reason that most home CO detectors go off. It actually turned out the house next door was under construction and they were using a generator,
Yeah.
and it was too close to their house because of how the property was. So it was all just getting vented right into their house. So, having a home CO detector for everything, it will help save a life, but it may not help prevent some of those long-term injuries that go on. And I have to tell you, the stories that I have heard about carbon monoxide injury, like, and carbon monoxide death, like, it's in places that you wouldn't expect it to be. When I was at that summit, I heard a story. A gentleman told a story about his son and daughter-in-law. It happened to be a faulty boiler in a hotel, and the hotel's solution wasn't to get the boiler fixed. The hotel's solution was actually to just remove the CO alarms.
Wow.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, those stories, I think they're important to tell, and I think it's important, like, if you have a story, tell your buddy, tell them why it's important, and tell them that we can help prevent that. So by having something that you're doing with your ambient air, by doing the combustion analysis, all of those things are really, really important. Because quite frankly, I would like a day where I don't have to read a news story about that or tell a news story about that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. I've heard stories from Jim Davis. I've heard stories from Mark Hunt, which is another one of our
Yep,
instructors.
Mark and Dom were actually at that conference with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Casey as well. All kinds of stories about hotels and PTAC units. And they always say, don't sleep on the first floor of a hotel, because of the parking lot and the cars and this and that. There's stories of pool boilers. They had issues. I can't remember exactly what it was, but they ended up plugging the combustion air to the mechanical space and creating a crazy amount of carbon monoxide. I think that was a Jim Davis story, and he went up to the hotel. and just let them know. And there's been times where I've heard where they threatened to, like, the hotel didn't want to do anything, and they threatened, we're going to call the fire department if you don't do something right now. Yeah, either you do it or we're doing it, because this is a very unsafe situation, right?
Yeah, and the other thing though, with like when we're talking about like in the public spaces, is people don't realize that it can actually travel through like walls. They think just because there is an event there that you're not going to get exposed to it, and
Right.
that is unfortunately just not the case. It can travel through there for you.
Yeah, it's definitely terrifying. I actually, about 2 years ago, I had a call that where they thought it was an older woman that was taken to the hospital, and she had the symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning, and they called me in to check out the house, and I was terrified, because it's like, I've taken the training, I've gone through the motions, this is my profession. I am a professional, but like, what if I miss something, you know? So, yeah, there's a lot of weight on your shoulders, especially in a situation like that where it's like there's a potential where somebody was harmed, and if they re-enter the house, they could potentially die if you screw up, so luckily, I mean, I was there for hours. I played with
Yep.
everything. I played with building pressures and everything, trying to get something to fail and trying to create carbon monoxide. And luckily, there was something else that happened to her, and it wasn't a carbon monoxide poisoning.
Well, that's actually one of the more fortunate stories,
Yeah.
right? Like because unfortunately contractors get called in, and again, if you don't have a CO detector and you don't have a combustion analyzer, are you really doing the due diligence to figure out what's going in that house? Because carbon monoxide, let's face it, it's colorless, it's odorless, and it's tasteless. There's some signs maybe something could be going on, but unless you're really testing, again, you'll never really truly know.
Exactly. Exactly. I have to tell you, it's been a pleasure meeting you. Me and you, before we even decided to do this, we bumped into each other in the parking lot, and we just had a nice talk out there. But yeah, UEI, I'm liking. I like where you guys are going. It seems like you're moving in the correct direction. You've come a long way in the last 15 years for sure.
Yeah, always
So-
trying to constantly improve. We have some advantages. We are not only a manufacturer, we actually own our own facilities. So all of those carbon monoxide detectors and combustion analyzers are made in our UK facility. And I have to tell you, the European market is light years ahead of us when it comes to these things.
Really?
Yeah.
So one thing, off topic, but I've been wondering, and I don't know if what does UEI stand for?
So UEI stands for Universal Enterprises Incorporated, was the original name.
Okay.
But it's been shortened down to just be UEI Test Instruments for quite some time. I don't know the exact year that they officially shortened it.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yep.
Nice. Anything else you want to plug before we call it?
No, you know what? I will say, you know what? I'll give a little plug for the summit. This was my first time attending. It has been a fantastic experience. The amount of knowledge and just getting to see all of the contractors and everybody just wanting to be better in their job. And I think if we continue on this trajectory, we're going to have a really, really great crew of HVAC contractors.
Thank you. I appreciate it. This is also my first summit, and it's mind blowing. But if you guys want to contact Louise Keller, she is with UEI. She is awesome. She's the national training manager.
You got
I
it.
got it.
You got it.
But yeah, hopefully we'll catch you guys at the summit in 2025. Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks for having us.